Welcome back to the Imaginary Gallery. It's TJ, your host. Tonight's discussion is a cautionary tale on the subject of red flags. If you're watching a video such as this one, you've probably had an experience or two with a cluster B creature, which would fit in the narcissist category, the psychopath, a sociopath, or a combination of all of it. If you've been through such a situation and you meet somebody new, chances are your logical brain is going to tell you that you just got out of a horrible situation with a horrible creature, and you've met this new charming person, and it's natural to think, what are the chances of me finding another one right after the last one? Well, honey, the chances are very likely. For some reason, these cluster B creatures are like a shark, and you're like a bleeding victim, and they are drawn to you. They especially love to find someone who's just been burned by a fellow cluster B creature, while they swoop in and pretend to be the savior for you. If you've researched various red flags to look out for, there's also a tendency for us to witness, let's say, a particular red flag with someone new, and it's very common for us to think, oh, that was a red flag. If you're a silent type, you may keep it to yourself. Or if you're a blabby type like I would be, say, hey, that's a red flag for an abusive person, which I've learned does not usually fare too well for you. But if you've studied or read about the red flags, another tendency many of us have is to notice the red flag, and if you're freshly out of a horrifying cluster B experience, you're a little bit standoffish as far as any type of serious romance. Especially if you've been with a creature, let's say for several years, you find out what it is, you study it, you learn all the red flags that you missed, and then you meet somebody new, and there's a tendency to be too nice and to think you're overthinking things. Like if the new person displays a common red flag, you may be tempted to think, well, I'm being too judgmental. Maybe that's just the way this person is. I'm going to give this person a chance. And if you dare tell the person your experience and say, I'm kind of uncomfortable because you have just said this, chances are they'll say, oh, you're wrong, and they'll use gaslighting techniques such as, I don't know why you're taking it out on me that your last lover was evil. I'm not. It's not fair, and some of them may even tell you that you need therapy because you're noticing red flags that you've been tuned into now due to your experience and your knowledge, and yet it's torn apart as completely wrong, which is a sign. If you notice something, bring it up in discussion with this love-bombing fool you've just met. If they're completely shutting off the entire thing, chances are you're dealing with yet another creature, because a non-creature would listen to what you're saying and understand why you feel the way you do, would empathize with you, examine itself, and maybe alter things. But the cluster B creature will just be quick to shut the whole thing down to say, oh, that is completely wrong. You're thinking of your ex, and that is a sign to look out for. Plus, you also have to battle with them talking to you, making excuses for things that you thought were red flags that there's another explanation for. You're tempted to think, well, that sounds plausible. Maybe it's true. Maybe I am messed up from that last experience, and you may be tempted to be docile and let the person do what it's doing. Chances are it's doing the love-bombing crap. Another trick they'll play is if you're accepting an invitation with such a person, but then making it clear, look, I'm not getting close to anybody after what I went through, that is a temptation for these cluster B creatures because it gives them the chance to put their craft into action for you. And many times you'll find them telling you with fake mirroring, oh, your lover treated you like that? Oh, well, I know what that's like. I've been through that. Yet they fail to connect on the point where you're saying that you don't want to get involved again because of that. No, many times they will claim to know what you're going through, but on the other hand will be saying how much they've fallen in love with you and how they want to be with you, and they understand that you don't want to get close because of your experience, but they can't help the way they feel about you. All of a sudden that becomes your problem, is the way it seems. There's obviously no empathy there because an empathetic person would understand where you're coming from, especially if they've gone through it themselves for real. That's a clue to look out for. If they talk about how strong their feelings are, and they never meant for them to be so strong, but because they're there now, you're going to have to do what they want. No, you don't. And a lot of times they'll try to set out to prove to you how much better they are than anybody else you knew, or your abusive person. And if you're foolish enough to tell them details about what the evil ex did, well, be prepared to hear, oh, I would never do that. Oh, that person had no right to do that to you. I'm going to take care of it. Who? Where is he? Oh, forget it. Keep in mind, you're not asking for anybody to prove anything to anyone. That's their own choice. Other things you can look out for, which I'll share a personal story. I had met a person who was claiming to be everything the ex was not. The ex was dishonest, cheating, and evil. This new one was like, oh, I'm none of those things. I'm perfect. I'm the opposite. I'm going to show you. But I picked up on a red flag and ignored it for the reasons I've mentioned previously. And the conversation was, I had already told the person how disenchanted I was with this dating type thing or relationship type thing because of what I had gone through, and even gave specific details, which is a mistake. But at one point I had heard enough mirroring to make it sound like the person knew where I was coming from. You really can't read their minds, so you figure, well, they must know. I figured I was with a like-minded person, so if I brought up a specific subject related to this, it would catch on to it and understand it and say, oh yes, I know what that's like. And not just say the words, but actually live it, which these people don't, and that's another clue you can look out for. They claim to share a certain viewpoint that you have, but you can clearly see they're not living up to that. Like in this case, I knew a cluster B creature I was involved with for over a decade who would pull certain tricks and scam people and do awful things to others, I found out later. And then when those others caught on and retaliated, it would treat it like a brand new, fresh confrontation of, that person just wronged me. Well, I'm going to show them. They think, due to their entitlement, they need to get that person back. Well, I was telling a story of this to the new one, saying, you know, one of the things this person used to do, it used to cheat people, and when it was caught, it would threaten them and try to ruin their lives. And this new creature, eyes lit up, and it's like, I love to ruin people's lives. And that was like a huge red flag that sent a sinking feeling inside, because who would say that? And I even said, well, if you love to ruin people's lives, I don't think we should be hanging out together because I don't want my life ruined. And this fool creature had tried to alter reality, switch things around and said, oh, well, I used to love to ruin people's lives. I don't do that anymore. Now here we are in gaslighting because the knee-jerk response of, oh, I love to ruin people's lives, which is present tense. As opposed to, if the second story was actually true, and it heard your story, it would be saying, oh, yeah, I know what that's like. I used to love to ruin people's lives, but I learned my lesson. No, it's, I love to, and then, well, I used to. They switch it as they go. And you know, from your own experience, your first thought that you blurt out is going to be accurate, probably, and yet this one's altering it. Another thing to look out for is, if it's a new person, they may seem to act obsessive. They want to know where you are at all times and talk to you every moment of the day, which I've covered elsewhere, which can be flattering to you, thinking, wow, this person just can't live without me. The other alternative is they're monitoring you. They're wanting to make sure that you're always thinking of them, trying to make sure you're not up to no good, possibly meeting a real person who's not phony with a mask, and they can't have that. Pay attention if you see you're getting a lot of attention. And another part to keep in mind is we tend in many cases to meet such a person who's giving all the attention and assume, oh, that's who this person is. We don't expect it to be part of a phase where this is one part, phase one, where they are acting like you're the only thing that matters in their life. And we tend to believe, oh, well, that's how this person is. But the longer you hang around, you'll probably end up seeing that switch, especially if you make plans together that are permanent, like, oh, let's get this house together. Oh, let's sign this lease together. Oh, let's buy this car together, those kinds of things. Once they've got you there, be prepared to see a whole new creature evolve. And that, unfortunately, is usually too late to resolve by the time you figure it out. And they do this on purpose. That's the whole point. Because if you just met them and went out once, it pulled tricks like this, well, you could just say, see you later, and be gone. But if they've got you sucked in and claws entwined into your life, it makes it a lot more difficult. So be prepared for that. You'll notice that they do go through multiple changes, roles, like they switch one mask to the next. It's very frightening when that mask flips, when you actually see the evil creature underneath that you'd never imagine would be there in the beginning. Keep in mind the isolation factor, where these people try to isolate you from others, and they do such fishy, crazy things that even if you were to go to a third party, a family or friend, and say, this person's doing this, I think it means this, you're going to sound like a Looney Tune. Because first off, whatever this creature's doing is completely ridiculous. But your logic is accurate as far as understanding what it's doing. Trying to communicate that to a third party who's not in there with you, you're gonna sound like a Looney Tune. Keep in mind though, the gut feeling, which typically knows the score, but again, it's very common for us to silence that because maybe in the past we came to a conclusion about something and we were totally wrong. With those experiences behind us and this gaslighting fool telling you that your perceptions are wrong, there is a tendency, wishful thinking, to believe that maybe this person is being serious. I'm going to give this person a chance. But remember that gut feeling. I wouldn't say, my gut feeling tells me you're no good, I'm through, because you'll just be yanked in to the labyrinth of, oh, your feeling is wrong, it must be based on something else, and more gaslighting. Keep these ideas in mind. There really isn't a remedy for all this except just to be conscious of it and be prepared to be on your own if these creatures are displaying some of these characteristics, because you can't consult them for assistance on this because they're not going to take their mask off typically. They're going to try to convince you that you've got something wrong and you need to be their friend. You need to let them do what they want and give them that chance, which is showing, again, no empathy for you or your position. It's just making their supposed feelings the center point of everything. Like, well, I didn't mean to fall in love with you, but because I did, well, we're going to have to be together, and no, you don't.
I am the Narcopath and you're not. Face the facts. I am the Narcopath. I know that we used to date a long time ago, and I've been forced to give you some confession. So I figured I might as well clear a few things up for you. When we first met for our first date, you wanted me to meet you at a local watering hole nightclub. It just so happens that that watering hole nightclub was one of my prime locations for sex. I used to frequent that place and made love to, I'd say, 95% of its clientele. I couldn't let you know this. So, when we met at the bar, I told you that I didn't know anybody in the bars here. And you believed it. Plus, when you're a whore like I am, you have an agreement with the clientele. My agreement was simply, if you ever see me here in public, we don't know one another. Works every time. And it worked then. I know there were specific nights, though, we'd go out together. And one particular night, saw this really hot stud and a chick looking over at us. The truth is, I'd been with one of them. The other one, though, was making my heart throb. Of course, I was trying to convince you that you were the only one in my eyes. I had a dilemma there, didn't I? Not so much for me, the Narcopath. So what I did was, when we were dancing together to the music, I looked over at them, perfectly knowing who a third of them were. I decided to act jealous and paranoid. Fake. I said, hang on to you, and I walked on over to them, started to talk to them. You were in a world of your own, convinced I didn't know anybody and figured I was just talking to the local folk, strangers. You didn't say a word. I did my thing and then came back to you and we shook our hips to the music. Like a few hours later, I went back up to the chick and I was talking to her again and you wondered what the deal was. So you asked, what was that all about? Who is she? What were you saying to her? So I made up a retarded conversation. I just made it up at the drop of a hat. I could tell you didn't buy any of it because none of it made sense. I didn't have time to think of a good one. If you need the truth, what really happened was, I went over to the chick and I told her, hey baby, I think he's hot with the red shirt on. I'm here with my friend and he gets kind of jealous. Why don't you go over there to that old lady in the corner and get my phone number and give it to the red shirt guy? I think he and I could make beautiful music together. I don't want to make my friend upset. And then I came back to you and told you she was trying to set me up with one of her friends, and I told her, oh, no thanks. I'm perfectly happy with you. So there. And of course, I got the phone number, I had the sex, and told you I was busy, and it all worked out for the best.